All right. Hey, we'll get started. So, I think growing up in my house, in any house, you probably had words that you were not allowed to use. All right? Probably appropriate that my mom's here. She probably has the whole list of words I probably shouldn't have used. Some of them were probably four-letter words, right? But there are other words, let's be honest. Some families will tell their kids, we don't use the word stupid, right? And if you have siblings, I'm sure you used the word stupid. And this is because we know this. We do this because we know that words have power. And we talked about in James earlier in this book, right? They can shape the course of our life. So we know that there's just some words you don't use. Now, we have a four-letter word in my house that we try not to use. We work really hard not to use it. But sometimes it sneaks out. And that word is plan. We have a plan, right? We don't use the word plan because when we do, the plan usually falls apart, right? Anybody ever have a plan that just falls apart, right? You make a plan and things don't go the way you expect. Well, when we make plans and they fall apart, there's frustration, there's anxiety. Things were supposed to go a certain way and they didn't. Often these are from circumstances outside of our control, and now we need to pivot, and that is annoying, to say the least, right? When you have an idea or plan in your head, you're going to do this and execute it. And if it happens once, yeah, no big deal, right? But if you feel like you keep making plans and they keep falling apart, you get nervous anytime you want to look much further than a few days down the road, because you feel like if you make this plan, it will fall apart and you're going to have to reset once again. And so like most families, we've come up with an alternative word. You know, all those words that you have a word that you're not supposed to say, so you come up with another word to say it. And, now you have kids, you'll find all sorts of words you can't use, because you don't want to pick up on that far. We have a replacement word for the dirty word that is plan. Instead, we like to say idea. We have a plan, we have an idea, right? You guys have plans tonight? No? Got plenty of ideas, but we don't have any plans. An idea has way more freedom and adaptability. An idea says this is something I'd like to do or something we try to do, but if circumstances change, I can pivot to something else. And so we think a lot of times about comparing plans versus ideas. I want to give you some things to compare about it. So I believe this, that plans follow a path, but ideas follow a principle. This is important to understand, that plans follow a path. This is the way we're going. Ideas follow a principle. Well, this is what we're just trying to accomplish. Plans can get broken. Ideas can evolve, right? And plans depend on details. And ideas depend on adaptability, right? Plans are, everything's got to fall into place. Let me give you an example. I could plan to go to the zoo, right? I could plan to go to the zoo with my family, but it ends up raining all day, or something goes wrong with a car, or whatever. But the idea, the principle of what is to spend time with the family, to do stuff with my kids and my wife, and that can look like a lot of different things. And so my plans fell apart, but the idea lives on, right? This small shift for us in the thinking, for me personally, has led to a lot less frustration, a lot more availability, lots of opportunities you wouldn't normally expect. It causes us to live in the moment more, and I'd argue it allows us to live, in the moment, because we take each day as it comes without grasping so hard to our plans and our schedules that one small setback can lead us to spiraling, right? And I don't know if you've ever been there where maybe you have a series of plans and step one falls apart and then there goes the whole day, right? I don't know if you've been there. Now, is it frustration-free? Of course not. But clinging to a plan causes so much more angst than just trying to adapt our ideas to fit new circumstances. And in our family, we've had enough plans get blown up and interrupted or delayed by extenuating circumstances that we've embraced ideas, taking the opportunities that God gives us as they arise. Now, am I saying, don't ever make plans? No, I'm not saying that, because sometimes you need to schedule events. Sometimes you need to plan ahead. Sometimes you need to buy the tickets or organize your calendar to protect your time and to make sure you get everything done that you need to do. But I'm saying today, what I want us to get is that we need to hold those plans with an open hand, allowing God to be able to change them or replace them or simply take them out of our hand, because He has something better for you today, something He wants to put in your hands. And so what James is talking about here in chapter 4, we're going to look at chapter 4 when it comes to the master plan of our life, which I'm sure in some way you all have one. When it comes to the master plan of our life, we need to be very cautious of mapping things so far out that we don't allow for God to take us on detours, or for to be able to take the scenic route, or for breakdowns, or just the heavy traffic of life, right? Making things take longer than maybe we would like them to. And that's why James writes this in James chapter 4. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and we will spend a year there, and we'll trade, we'll make a profit. But yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and we will do this or that. And as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it is sin. Now, if we're honest, let's be honest, I think all of us have a plan in our heads about how we want things to go, right? Maybe you have a plan for your whole life. Maybe you just have a plan for your day off. Either way, it's totally normal to have these kinds of plans. But if we're honest, we know that sometimes plans fall through, or our day gets hijacked by what I like to call the tyranny of the urgent, that thing that comes up. Amir and I were driving the other day. We had all these errands to run, and we had a whole list of things we were going to do. And as we're getting on the freeway, my car just straight up stalls. I'm like, well, I guess I know what we're doing today. We're going to coast into the AutoZone here and buy some car parts. And so my day got changed, and that happens. And you know what happens is when disappointment will set in because we have unmet expectations. How many of you know that disappointment is just unmet expectations? I'm disappointed. Why? Because it was supposed to go like this, man. It was supposed to be this. This is how I had it written out. And it's frustrating when one broken plan seems to lead into another, and then another, and another one. Before we know it, we're nowhere near where we thought we'd be, like taking a series of wrong turns and ending up completely lost, or in a neighborhood we never intended to be, and we find ourselves thinking, how did we get here? Sometimes this just happens because life happens and we get caught up in the wave, all right? But sometimes it's because our plans are not God's plans. And we have this whole idea of how life is supposed to go and what it should look like, but we never bothered to ask the Lord if he has any input in the matter. We invite God. Hey, God, here's what I'm going to do, and so if you want to come along, that'd be a good time. And since the Lord knows what is best for us and God has bigger perspective than we do, God is going to do what needs to be done regardless of our ideas and our agenda. Now, that's not to say that most of you don't ask God to lead. I'm not implying that, or that you're not praying that God will take you where he wants to go. But it's that we come to God with our own map, and we say, Lord, take me here. This is where I want to end up, right? Lord, this is the goal. Maybe you have life checklists, or maybe you have milestones in your life that you're supposed to hit. Hey, by the time I was, 30, I was supposed to be this and this and this, and and I'm not even going to fill in those blanks for you. You know what those blanks are, right? I thought I'd be here, but I'm not here. Lord, there was a plan, there was a map. And, I'd like to think that at some point most of us have asked Jesus to take the wheel, right? Lord, just take the wheel, right? And so sometimes, though, we're sitting in the passenger seat or we're in the back seat and we're looking at the map we drew, and you know what we're doing? We're telling God he's going the wrong way. Ever do that? Lord, I told you to take the wheel, but I did not expect you to go this way. Here's a simple truth for you. Asking Jesus to drive also means letting him navigate. He gets to decide the route. How many of you have ever seen a life map? Anybody ever have a life map? Maybe you've made a life map for yourself. It's a visual representation of where you've been, where you are, where you'd like to go. They look some days. People use them professionally to map out their career goals. They use them to map out their personal life goals. And the problem with many of these is that they want you a lot of times to identify specifically your 5-year plan, or set these specific milestones you need to reach. Daily, weekly, annual. Here's where we're going to be. And what happens if you don't? What happens if you're not along this milestone? Who are you, right, if you fall short? That is nerve-wracking. Like, I'm supposed to be here by now because the plan says, the 5-year plan says I'm supposed to be right here. And I also think, by the way, that's the worst interview question. Anybody ever get that? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The only correct answers are either gainfully employed or independently wealthy. I'm not really sure. I don't know, man. I'm just trying to get a job today. Maybe some of you have drawn out your map, right? You have life goals, career goals, relationship goals. And for some of those goals, you have placed arbitrary timetables as to when you should hit these milestones, right? And this often leads people to one of two unfavorable outcomes. You either settle for good instead of great, just so you can say you hit the deadline, right? Or severe discouragement when you miss the deadline, causing you to question whether you're on the right path, or then just to say, Lord, what am I doing wrong? There was a plan. How come I'm not there yet? And both of those are very discouraging. And some people, are so caught up like, I need to be married and have kids and da-da-da-da by this time, so I'm going to find someone. Doesn't have to be the right someone. I'm just going to find someone who will help me hit this goal, even if it's the right person. And then, of course, I understand that some of you have your maps drawn out for you, right? Maybe you've had parents who had a dream for your life, and any deviation from that dream might make you a disappointment. And so you struggle with self-worth because you haven't lived up to their plan. Or let me show some love to my military guys. The military told you what the next 3 years of your life's going to look like, where you're going to be stationed, how you're going to promote, and all the promises are made until things change, right? And so then, shore duty turns into deployment. Orders get extended, they get changed, they get canceled, or they just simply lost some bureaucracy, right? You want to make plans, but someone else is drawing the map, and so you hurry up and you wait, expect it to be faithful, right where you are, but available to leave at a moment's notice. And that's really frustrating. So James instead challenges us to live in the present, to engage the present. He says, look, come now you who say, today or tomorrow we're going to go to such a town and such a place, and we're going to spend a year there, we're going to do all this, and we're going to trade to make a profit. I love when people come and tell me all their life plans. And I love what James says, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. You don't even know tomorrow. I mean, great, yeah, it's a great vision, it's a great dream, but what's your life? You're a mist, you appear for a little while, it vanishes. And that is why you're now, why this is where we are now, that this is the space that we need to work in, this moment in time, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. And because your plans are just that, they're your plans, not necessarily God's plans. And whenever I try to substitute my plans for God's, rather than ask what God wants, I usually find myself having to reorient myself when God's will reveals itself in my life. Because it's so easy to feel like I have to make all these decisions. And it is our propensity to plan, right? We want things laid out before us. Who are my organizers? Who has like a binder for their life? I know you're out there. Yes, you know who you are, and that's okay. There's grace here. But you've got it all figured out, right? And we love, we love Google Maps. And before that, we used to use a road atlas on these on long trips, and because we could look and say, well, in 5 miles, we're coming up on this town, and we're gonna be up here. Did you say Thomas Brothers? Yeah, Thomas Brothers map. Man, I'm gonna say it right now. I have a friend who recently got pulled over for looking at their phone, for looking at directions on their phone. You don't know the danger that was trying to balance a Thomas Brothers guide on your knee and look down at mighty fine, tiny, 2-point font, trying to find a street and look up. Okay, so I'm saying things are safer now. That's all I'm going to say. But we were able to, it was a map that folded, and if your street ran out, you had to go find another page and find that page while you're driving. You're on page 2, it's go to page 37. But yet we lived. And look, I like about maps, physical maps, you can look and see where you are, you can see where you've been, you can see where you're going, and you can a sense of where you're going to be, right? But that's not how life works, is it? And the path to A to B is not really a straight line, is it? Now, what James is telling us is to make sure that we're not so wrapped up in our plans that we refuse to accept any other option, or think that because we ended up on a detour, a road that we didn't intend to go on, that our trip is a failure. Now, does this mean that we don't ever make plans? Of course not. The Bible tells us this. It says what? That's the wrong verse. That's the wrong verse. But the verse says this: man plans his path, and the Lord directs his steps. Man plans his path, the Lord directs his steps. It just means that as we make our plans, we should ask God for his input and his involvement, and we need to leave room for God to make adjustments as necessary. That's the point of James saying this. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. So there's a common Arabic phrase I heard growing up, inshallah. Inshallah. It means if God wills. I will see you tomorrow, inshallah. Okay? if God wills. Do you know what this attitude does for us? Just tagging this on. I wouldn't recommend going and necessarily just adding this to all of your statements, but just in your heart, if you're out with something and you say, this is my desire, hey, I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. What does this attitude do for us? Well, number one, it puts God at the front of our lives. It says this, it says that God is in control. And if God is in control, it brings us peace, knowing that He's going to do the right thing. And guess what? And you know what peace is? Peace relieves the anxiety that rigid plans can have on our life. And it breeds gratitude as we learn to appreciate that every day is a day that God has given us, and every opportunity to do what brings us joy and pleasure are a gift from God, and that our good pleasure falls in line with God's good pleasure. And so when we say, this is what I want to do, Lord willing, and the cool thing is, we can understand that if we get to do those things, great, but if something else comes in and takes away, that this is what God has for us today. And that's okay, because that's God giving us that gift. And yeah, God has given you agency in your life. You get to make all kinds of decisions every day. And yes, you get to plan your weekend. But the God of the universe isn't above interceding into your life, coming into your life for His purposes and our blessings. Because remember, God wants what's best for you. So, I sometimes have to remind people of this. God is not out to ruin your life. When God interrupts your life, He's not like He's mad at you or just because He can. Now, the truth is that surrendering our best laid plans to God, we leave ourselves open to giving Him above and beyond all that we could ask or think. Why settle for my good when I can have God's best? So I think we need to ask, why do we make these big plans? Why do we organize these lists of our life? And why do we map it out and lay it all out? Well, I'll tell you why. If God is in control and knows what's best for us, the question is why do we commit so hard to these big life-affirming plans that we stress over, that send us into a spiral where we don't get to check all the boxes? And there's a pattern that we need to identify. And it's not going to be true for everybody, but I think it comes into play. Number one, we plan because we worry. Any worriers in here? Yes, I see those hands all across the room. Yeah, right. We worry. And we get so caught up in the what-ifs of life that we don't appreciate or live in the what is true right now. And the details begin to consume us, and we think if we can sort through everything, it's just going to all become easier. But Jesus said this, He said, don't be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Okay? Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. And the truth is, a lot of our plans come from something much more insidious. And we worry because, well, we want control. We do. And we often think or feel like our life is out of control, and more specifically that God is driving with His knees and we're all over the place, right? And we want to reach over and we want to grab the wheel, we want to get our car going in the right direction, which is, in our mind, is really any direction that we have control over. But our worry and our anxiety never really leads us anywhere that we want to go. And Jesus said this, He said, look, which of you can be anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? Or a couple of translations say, or add a single cubit to his height. Has worrying ever made you taller? No. You can't affect change with worry. And you can't control things better because you're stressed about it. And usually when I'm stressed about something, it actually gets worse. So I like this old saying that man plans and God laughs. Yes, He does. And usually I find the most guaranteed way to not do something is tell God what I'm going to do. He's like, you think? Okay. That's the best you could come up with? The real truth is this. We want control because we don't trust God. We like to think that we know better. James says this, as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. And so these are the important questions that we need to ask ourselves. Am I trusting in God, or am I trusting in myself? Am I trusting in God, or am I trusting in myself? Will I accept God's process in my life as much as I'll accept God's product? See, here's the thing. We dream about things. We pray to God for specifics, right? Take your pick. Pray for a car. Pray for a relationship. Whatever it is that you're praying for, God, this is what I want. We can be very specific about what it is that we want. I've prayed specifically for a vehicle and got like that exact same vehicle. But the process to get there is completely in God's hands. And I think sometimes that we think because we're like, no, A to B, right? And God's like, no, actually we're going to go around the scenic route to get there. And, the question is will I accept God's process to get me where he wants to go? Or will I just going to accept the product? God answered my prayer. He just didn't do it the way I was going to do it. Well, it's because he's God and you're not. Okay? Do I believe that how I get what I want might be as important, if not more important, than my desired outcome? And the last question is, do I believe that today matters more than tomorrow? Here's what I mean. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so am I potentially missing out on something now because I am so focused on an unguaranteed later? Well, so what? Well, let's ask the question today. How do I engage the present? That's the series, Engage. Let's be active in our faith. How do I engage the present? How do I live in the now without getting so caught up in the then? Well, number one, hold today with an open hand. Okay? Hold today with an open hand. Let God decide what to put in and what to take out. And our resistance sometimes to letting go of our plans is also the same thing that keeps God from giving us his blessings. If you walk around with your life like this is it. This plan, no one's clutching this from my hands. It also means that God can't give you something better. So hold today with an open hand. Number two, change your path into principles. Change your path into principles. When we allow God to define our ideas of success in relationships and anything else we typically plan for, it eliminates there being only one possible way to get what we need and what we desire. And so when we show God our map with his destinations, instead of a genuine desire to have what God wants for us, we miss out on his version, which I guarantee is the better version. Like the plan of, hey, I'm going to be a CEO and married with 2.5 kids and a dog by the time I'm 35, looks a lot different than the principle of, I want to have a successful career and I want to serve the people that God puts in my life. One of those has so many parameters that you're bound to be disappointed. Even if you get all those things and you don't get them until you're 37. Not the plan, right? The other one creates opportunities for God to fulfill it in so many ways that you didn't even know were possible. And it's funny, when I pray in principle and say, God, these are the things I want, God will give me those things. And I just have to pay attention and realize God has answered my prayers better than even what I thought of. And then last, act like what you do today will matter tomorrow. Well, what does that mean? Well, I talked about not making plans. Think about this. Most of the big things in our life are the accumulation of lots of little decisions. Okay? Most of the things in our life, what happens to you down the road are the accumulation of lots of little decisions, right? Think about those things we talk about. Diet and exercise. If you want to get swole, you're not going to get swole in one day. But if you go to the gym today or you go to the gym the next day, today, that leads till tomorrow, okay? Or, take your pick. And we might have a vision of where we want to be in our life in the future, but we have no control over the timeline. All we can do is do the things now that will inch us towards that goal. And the only thing we can control is our responsibilities, our character, our integrity, the things only we can do, and God's going to work out the rest of the details. If you think about where you want to be in 10 years, you can have this whole map out, but you just have to make a decision today. I want to be a wise person. Well, great, read your Bible today. I want to be a better Christian. Fine, make the decisions today. Choose integrity today. Bill Gates once said this. He says, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. It's a good quote when you think about it. And the reality is that we oftentimes, have these grandiose plans and they fall short, and that's where we get disappointed in ourselves. But this daily, consistent discipline in the same direction means that over time, we're going to end up where we want to go. I could walk across this country. I'm not going to do it in a day. Might not even do it in a month. But I could get there one step at a time over a period of time. And so the places that you want to be in life, those big plans you want to make, tomorrow will worry about itself. Act today. Act like what you do today is going to matter tomorrow. And so James ends this chapter with these words, whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. So when we know that God has a better way and we still insist on doing it our way and making our own plans, well, you know what that is? That becomes disobedience. If God says, here's the way we're going to go, and you say, I'm going to go my own way, that's disobedience. And we'll never get where you want to go with that kind of attitude, mister, okay? Well, so now what? Let me ask you this question. What plans have you made about your life that you need to surrender to God. And think about your hopes, think about your dreams, and ask God to show you what He wants for you, because it's going to be better. And believe that God has far more in store for you than you even want for yourself. And I believe that. All right. I just pray and we'll go to discussion time. Father, I am